What is the weirdest thing you are or saw someone addicted to? Story 1. I used to know a girl who was addicted to eating those little polyester chips that are used for packaging. She always had a bag of them with her. The noise she made when she was munching on them used to set my teeth on edge. Story 2. Eating markers like the tube of it, inside the casing. I told his mother and her reply was, "Oh, he's doing it again." Like, again? Toxic ink? Again? I don't mean licking it, I mean chewing. Black ink and saliva and swallowing the ink-soaked sponge. I also seen someone brew some tea straight from the kettle on a stove bubbling straight down their throat. Story 3. My first ever girlfriend was genuinely addicted to Coca-Cola. She would have a glass as soon as she woke up and drink it all day. The one or two times I was there when her family had run out of it, she was irritable, anxious, and so grumpy until she was able to get down to the store to buy more. Strangely, it wasn't even the caffeine or sugar she was addicted to, because having a coffee or a different type of soda wasn't enough to ease her withdrawal symptoms. Story 4. I had a good friend that was addicted to making himself pass out. He would ball up his fists and press them into the side of his neck to cut off blood flow till he passed out, the same way a sleeper hold works to knock people out. He had a whole routine where he would set up in an office chair in his bedroom at night, he would get drinks and snacks and spend a couple of hours there doing it over and over. He did it so much he had permanent bruises on the sides of his neck that he would always have to make up excuses for. He said it felt good when you did it, but if you did it over and over for a while, then it would make you loopy just like getting high. Story 5. Rocket League. I'm not even joking. Guy in his 20s playing up to 8 hours a day. Used to be super social, became a hermit pretty much for 7 years. Would pretend to be sick at work so he could play 3 days straight. Lost his whole social life. Spend New Year's every one of those years sitting in a dark room windows covered playing that game. Tried to get him to stop, but never worked. Story 6. I used to be addicted to chewing on ice, or maybe obsessed. I would bring a cup full of crushed ice with me everywhere. When I went to the beach, I would just bring a bag of ice from the gas station and sit and eat it. I stopped for ages and then became temporarily obsessed again during one of my pregnancies. I was checked for vitamin deficiencies both times, but nothing came up. Story 7. I knew a girl in high school who had pica. She would go to In-N-Out and order animal fries and then dump the fries on the ground and start devouring the cardboard fry container. She claimed it was the best tasting cardboard. I'll take her word for it. Story 8. Judge Judy, and it was me. My boyfriend introduced me to the show in my mid-30s and I binged it on YouTube, listening to it while working in our warehouse or driving and cleaning and really doing anything. 6 years later, if I have a task that I really need to get into productive mode for, I put her on and my brain shifts gears. At one point, it felt weird to work without her voice in the background yelling at people. She's like my white noise. She's my default soundtrack. Story 9. I'm addicted to chapstick. I can't go more than 3 hours without applying it. I think my lips are relying on the chapstick now because they get dry so quickly, and it feels like nails on a chalkboard when they do. I can't focus on anything else besides my lips being dry until I get some chapstick. Story 10. I knew someone who had an uncontrollable habit of making rubber band balls. I don't know that it qualifies as an addiction, but it was definitely a habit she could not break. She'd collect up rubber bands from around the store we worked in. We worked at a popular retail outlet that sells overpriced lingerie and loungewear. This girl would hoard all the rubber bands from new shipment and constantly knot them, add another layer, and keep adding until a ball formed. Her hands were constantly moving, and it was like the rest of her was operating separately. She ended up fired over it. Our store supervisor kept finding these balls of varying size in odd places around the store. The girl would hide them. When she was fired, the supervisor told her, "You're not being paid to stand around fidgeting. You're being paid to sell." Thing is, she did her job. She just always had this thing going on to occupy her hands. I figured it had to do with anxiety. The supervisor tried to use theft of store resources as the reason for firing her, but it didn't fly, so she flat out told her to leave because her habit was annoying to everyone. It wasn't. No one cares. Story 11. I used to have a flatmate that had a few existing mental health challenges from a previous head trauma. I assume this was the reason for him being extremely prone to addiction. He had a few chemical dependencies, but the interesting ones were things like hand strength or chess. He would become utterly obsessed with things and show every sign of addiction, wanting to do nothing else and staying up for multiple days. I say addiction because he got so much euphoria from them, but it's probably more like a manic obsessive episode. Story 12. I'm surprised nobody has said this because I didn't think it was that weird, but chewing gum. I have a bizarre impulse problem with chewing gum, and for that reason I don't usually actually buy it, so it's fine. But when I do buy it, a normal pack is gone in an hour. The plastic tubs with 50 pieces go in a day, never more than 2. My stomach feels rotten afterwards, not from swallowing the gum, but just from the sugar alcohols, and so I know not to do it often, but when it's around, I chew it. I chew it all, man. My partner sees me chewing gum and she's like, "Oh, honey, you're gumming again, aren't you?" It's pretty funny, actually. I'd also like to say that I don't appear to have a similar impulse problem with weed, cocaine, opiates, or meth, possibly with alcohol, but definitely with chewing gum. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Story 13. Sounds like a joke, but I'm completely addicted to talking to myself out loud around the house when no one's home. It's actually become difficult for me to structure my thoughts if I can't do it, so I'd say that constitutes as a mild withdrawal. Story 14. Alcohol. Why is it weird? Because it's a highly dangerous and destructive drug, which is sold almost everywhere, and being addicted to it is largely socially accepted. Can't have a party without drinks? No worries, society got you covered. Drinking a glass or a bottle of wine every day? You're cultured. It goes so far that many people differentiate between alcohol and other drugs, while there are 0 good reasons to exclude alcohol from other drugs. As a recovering alcoholic, this felt the weirdest because it took years of constant drinking until the people around me even became concerned. When I quit my job due to my addiction, I got whiskey as a farewell gift. It doesn't seem weird being addicted to alcohol, but the way society enables casual alcoholism is quite weird. Story 15. My friend in high school was addicted to caffeine pills to keep up with her studies and her burgeoning music group. When a record label became interested in her group, she had to double up on the caffeine pills to rehearse for a live performance at the max. The increase in pills led to a nervous breakdown and she had to cancel the show and get clean. So sad. I have very close family friends whose son and daughter are addicted to soda, mostly diet and regular Coke. The daughter was morbidly obese to the point of needing gastric bypass and still wasn't losing much weight until the doctors figured out it was her soda intake. Her brother is the same and both still chug it all day. From the moment they woke up to when they went to sleep, they were drinking that shit all day, and it's insane to see the lasting damage it's done to their health and how they still drink that crap. Story 17. I don't know if it was an addiction per se, but a girl I was friends with as a kid used to eat Archie comics when we were like 8. Not the covers, just the inside pages. She'd crawl under her bed, it had a bed skirt, mid-hangout, and you'd just hear munching sounds because she'd be eating the pages, and under the bed was just comic cover carcasses. I know pica is a thing, and she doesn't have any kind of developmental disorder like autism or mental health issue that would explain it, nor was she neglected, so I can only assume it was perhaps some kind of random nutrient deficiency or just a weird thing. I don't know. Story 18. Had a coworker who ate receipt paper. She kept a roll in her apron pocket and would tear off little pieces while waitressing. Soon as the last customer left, she'd rip off a long swatch and chew on it like a goat. I kept trying to get her to go get blood work done to see if she had a vitamin or mineral deficiency, but she said it was cheaper just to eat paper, which was tough to argue with her, to be fair. When I was pregnant with my first kid, I craved baking soda. We kept a box in our freezer and I'd have to grab a little bit every time I was near it. I'd immediately spit it out because it was gross, but 5 minutes later I'd be drooling thinking about it in the freezer. Story 19. Not that wild, but a good story. I used to work as a cashier at a local corner store and we had plenty of interesting regulars. One of them that sticks with me is a woman who would come in every day or two and buy 1 or 2 of the big bottles of Listerine. I asked my coworker why, because she knew all of them better at the time. She told me that the woman's husband had died roughly a year ago, and she promised him on his deathbed that she'd never drink again. So her workaround was to drink the mouthwash. It's sad, and I sometimes think about her and wonder if she's alright. I hope she stopped drinking mouthwash. Story 20. When I was in a group program for eating disorder treatment some years ago, one woman's binge food of choice was the meal replacement drinks they would force us to eat if we refused solid food. Maybe it was just the context of when I had to drink it, but those things are really revolting, extremely thick and almost greasy and gritty in texture. Anyways, it took the staff a little time to cotton on to the fact that she was refusing to eat solids specifically because she was obsessed with these drinks. They started some new tactic on her. I don't know the details, but they didn't give her the drinks anymore. A few days after the beginning of this refusal, staff found her in one of the unused therapy rooms surrounded by empty cartons and puke, still sipping one. She picked the lock on the supplies cupboard and stolen multiple pallets of these drinks and went to town so quickly she'd made herself sick and then continued to drink them. I've had some pretty disgusting moments myself in the depths of disorder, but her addiction to these horrible drinks was so bizarre. Story 21. I'm not going to say the specific brand I used because I don't want anyone else to do it, but I had a really hard time as a teenager. I was a teen mom struggling to take care of my kid while trying to get out of an abusive relationship, suffering from addiction, and I also lost a house in a flood, so when I was really down bad, I would run out of drugs, I'd buy inhalers from the pharmacy, and get high off the stuff inside by eating it. It was so bad, all it did was keep me awake for days and make me crazy, but I did it for like a year when I'd run out of other stuff, and I cringe just thinking about it. It's so sad what people will do to themselves when they're hurting. I've been sober almost 4 years. Story 22. I was addicted to eating salt in high school. I would carry a salt shaker around with me and dump it in my hand and just lick it periodically throughout the day, every day. Started because I had a couple fainting spells and my doctor told me I had low electrolytes and I needed to eat more salt, drink more Gatorade, things of that nature. And the addiction began. I think I did that for at least 3 years. Story 23. Hands down, video games. My ex got super addicted to CS halfway through our relationship. It was so bad that all I ever wanted for him was to sleep next to me just once at any given night. Needless to say, we fought a lot because of that, which resulted in us drifting apart and causing more fights. Oh, actually, he ended up befriending some chick and then broke up with me. We broke up for other reasons, but I would never date someone who's into CS, COD, or other games like Rocket League or Dota. Some people are just not able to draw that line between healthy and unhealthy. Pick your partner wisely. Story 24. One of my coworkers, male, early 30s, drinks 5 to 6 energy drinks before lunch and 3 to 4 after, every single day. Doesn't matter the flavor, variety, sugar content, or caffeine content. It has to have taurine in it. He bought a few the other day that didn't have it and he burned through them much faster than usual, until he looked at the label and ran to the gas station across the street to grab a Red Bull. Story 24. I guess addicted is probably the right word. When I was 19, I had a summer where I was completely out of control. Slept all day, out all night. Drugs, booze, sex, just truly going hard. I don't know if there was a chemical reason, but I became obsessed with orange juice. There was a grocery store like 5 minutes from my parents' house, and I would roll up daily and buy a 6-pack of the 1.75 liter bottles. It would be gone in like 2 hours. I got less depressed, summer ended, and I went back to college and stopped drinking orange juice. Story 25. I'm addicted to using a blow dryer on high heat and burning my legs. I have googled this everywhere and can't find anything about it. I haven't met anyone else who understands either or read in a post about it anywhere. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but it gives a sensation that feels quite nice. However, my legs are scarred now and look terrible. I do it multiple times a day and can't seem to stop before I used very hot showers. Anyways, yeah, it's super weird and I don't know of a solution. Story 26. For a good year after I got my septiclasty, I was really attached to those flossing teeth sticks. Like I felt like I needed one every hour or two. During my recovery from the surgery, I was on some heavy-duty medication, and for some reason I was using those sticks, and I think the sensation of them being in my teeth got linked to the dopamine from the drug. It took a year or two for that association to wear off, but I still get a little ping of dopamine when I use them. Story 27. I think I'm addicted to One Piece. I've seen every episode, started the show over with my kids, and I'm also reading the manga. I have merch, I relate real-life scenarios to One Piece daily. I love the show so much. I keep wanting to start a podcast or YouTube channel, but I'm the biggest procrastinator and have no idea what I'm doing half the time, so yeah. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Story 28. When I was a teenager in the early 2000s, I lived in an environment where winter could last for 5 to 6 months. When it got extremely cold, my lips were really prone to cracking and bleeding, so I always had chapstick on me. Well, one year, I just kept routinely putting on chapstick even when it warmed up. Eventually, my lips became physically dependent on the chapstick. If I didn't constantly apply, they would dry up painfully immediately. In the end, I just quit cold turkey and spent about a month with dry, cracked lips, which isn't easy when you're in high school and have to constantly talk. Story 29. I would overdose nicotine for a while as a 13 to 14-year-old. Definitely the strangest addiction I have had. And no, I don't mean nicotine, because I'm still addicted to nicotine. That was something else. Remember an example very clearly. I had just gotten my hands on snus, like small packages of tobacco you put in your mouth. These were the most potent I could find and had 12 micrograms of nicotine per pack. Note, you would normally get about a quarter of that. So I took 4 of those whilst applying a nicotine patch and just started chain smoking John Silver 1.2 milligram cigarettes. This makes you feel horrible, as if you're dying, as if your body is made of plastic and it's melting off, like your bones are bending. Your eyes feel like they have acid in them. And then sunlight, normally so warm, felt so horribly cold, as if I was freezing my melting plastic skin. I did this about 100 times. Story 30. I used to be addicted to compressed air. The stuff that you use to dust a PC or PlayStation. Apparently, if you inhale it, it takes oxygen away from your brain, causing a really, really intense high. It only lasts for about a minute or two, which is what caused me to want more. Very dangerous and kills so many brain cells. Thankfully, I'm not doing it anymore. Story 31. I didn't see it, but I knew a guy who used to be addicted to putting a needle in his arm. If he couldn't get a hit, he would still do that. And when he did take a hit, he would kind of thrust the needle back and forth in a bit of a motion. He mostly did these things with the hippies, and I wasn't invited. He claimed to have once done 55 lines of coke in 1 hour. He died in his 20s, dropping dead of a heart attack at the factory where he worked. Story 32. There was an eraser fluid called Erase EX by a company called Coors. I've seen people emptying the bottle on cotton waste and just sniffing the whole day. Apparently it gave them a high and completely numbed any hunger. The thinner used was highly addictive. Seen so many kids doing it, and it was crazy. Story 33. I have ARFID, so my eating habits have always been seen as bizarre to others. One thing that I think I can eat for the rest of my life is just rainbow sprinkles. I have phases where I just buy a container and eat them plain over a couple of days. I haven't had them in a while because I've been away at college and I wouldn't dare down a thing of rainbow sprinkles in front of my roommate, but as soon as I get home, I'm heading for my parents' sprinkle cabinet. Story 34. I used to work in a prison, and after a huge search of the entire place, there was a shortage of every drug. While most managed until they found more ways to smuggle stuff inside, there was about 10 who had stolen some acid from the print workshop and put it in their vapes with bits of latex gloves and smoked it. The side effects were just as horrific as you'd imagine. Glad I'm out of that job. Story 35. I actually got addicted to sniffing some pins once. They were made of a particular type of plant-based resin, and they are known to be very strong smelling. Most people don't like the smell, but to me it smells sweet in a chemical sort of way. I kept sniffing it and got mildly addicted to doing so until I stopped and my throat started to get sore. Story 36. A common symptom for autism is the adherence to a routine. It was part of my routine to eat 4 pieces of fried Spam. I've only recently broke out of this, but I used to eat Spam every day for about 2 years even if I didn't want to eat it. If I didn't stick to my routine, then it would mess up the rest of my day, so I had to eat it. I don't dislike Spam, and I still think it's very tasty, but it's very high in sodium and it's not good for you. You shouldn't eat it every day like I did. Now my routine food is a box of Junior Mints. Story 37. 2 things. Christmas mince pies. There's a supermarket that makes the best Christmas mince pies here in New Zealand. They're not the super fancy ones, they're not gourmet or anything, they're the supermarket brand, but they blow every single other one out of the water. My friend and I call them crack because they're so addictive to us. The second thing is sparkling water. As a kid, I despised the aphostatic water. As I grew older, I started tolerating it, then started to like it. Now I'm addicted. I've got a soda stream at home and make a lot of use of it. I love it. People say it's bad for your teeth, but my dentist keeps telling me my teeth look good. I know that carbon dioxide makes water a bit more acidic, but I think it's massively overstated.